Welcome, beautiful souls, to The Matchmaker with Letitia Underwood. I'm so thrilled to have each and every one of you joining me today for this special live stream. Today's topic is a truly fascinating one as we dive into the world of relationships and love. We'll be exploring the insights and wisdom from the incredible book, Getting to I Do, written by the renowned Dr. Patricia Allen. Dr. Patricia Allen's book is a treasure trove of knowledge, guiding us through the journey of finding and nurturing fulfilling relationships. Her profound insights have touched the lives of countless individuals, helping them navigate the complexities of dating, love, and commitment. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or simply seeking to deepen your understanding of love, you're in for a treat today. Together, we'll explore the key principles shared by Dr. Patricia Allen and discuss how they can shape your paths to finding true connection and lasting love. Feel free to engage with me in the chat, ask questions, share your thoughts, and let me know where you're tuning in from. This is a safe space to discuss matters of the heart openly and respectfully. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's embark on this beautiful journey together. Together, we'll discover how you can all get closer to I do and create loving relationships that stand the test of time. Thank you for being here with me, dear viewers and subscribers. Let's make this live stream an unforgettable experience. Now, let's dive into the pages of Getting to I Do and explore the transformative power of love. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like this video, you share, and if this is your first time watching, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Right, the more people who are tuning in, the more people who are liking, the more who are sharing, and the more who are subscribing helps the channel to grow. And as you all know, when the channel grows, it makes for better content because then it lets me know that people do enjoy what I'm saying and it motivates me to keep going, right? Having this conversation in this day and age is tough. Talking about marriage, trying to instill the benefits of marriage in women, trying to get women to understand the benefits of marriage and how and the roadmap on how to get there is a very difficult conversation to have because marriage is not valued in our society today. It's not something that women and men long for or ascribe to. So if you are enjoying the content and you feel that it is necessary and it is much needed, then help me get the message out by liking, sharing, and subscribing. So today we're going to delve into chapter 14, striking a deal. So we've gone through 13 chapters. We're almost through with the book. If this is your first time tuning in, feel free to go over the previous chapters, or you can read the book yourself and then you can catch up with us. So, all week and in subsequent days, I will be reading from each chapter. Sorry for the long hiatus. I had some family issues that came up, so I had to deal with that. But I am back again, and we will finish out the book, starting today with chapter 14, Striking a Deal. In the perfect phase, you met the one perfect man on earth for you, and he finally found the woman of his fantasies. Then, in the imperfect phase, you found out the truth about his weird habits and he learned about your nutty obsessions. If at that point you still liked each other, but he was not willing to assume responsibilities, or you were not able to give up your independence, one or the other of you probably found ways to end the relationship. But if you both chose to accept the other, based on the good, the bad, and the in between, and he, as the male, assumed the responsibility of the relationship, and you, as the female, gave up your independent ways, or vice versa, you will now enter the negotiation period of the relationship. It is in the next 3 months that you will have the opportunity to begin building a long term relationship, commitment, married or not. The relationship commitment takes over where the commitment to a person ends, because a human being cannot be good enough every day to be worthy of a commitment from you. But the relationship can be, and it will keep two committed people together. Life commitment questions. Although in this period, you and he will continue to talk about the same things you have been discussing since the beginning of the relationship, now in the negotiation period, there is a greater weight to resolving things, because these are issues that you will live with daily for the rest of your lives. Of course, life means change, and you and he must constantly renegotiate. But negotiating things before trouble strikes eliminates a lot of stress on a couple. For instance, if you do choose to marry, will it be in a religious or civil ceremony, or both? What impact for life will this have on your families? What about children? Yes, no, how many? What religion will they be raised in? Or none? What if he already has children and an ex wife? If you both have careers that demand a lot of time and you both want a family, one of you has to decide to put the family first or the career first. Which of you will it be? If he wants to live in a rural area and you want to live in a big city, you will have to work out either living in a rural area near a big city, or, if you can afford it, living in the city with a weekend country house. Do you put career as the first priority in where you will live, or will you choose your location based on the family you want to raise? Most masculine energy men want to make sure that their career is grounded. So, most masculine energy men will want to live near their business. Most feminine energy women will want the opportunity of having children, while their masculine energy man carries the major burden of support. Will you live near your parents, his children? What financial goals are important? Do you want to live for today and spend, or save for tomorrow? To reach an understanding and a commitment, each person has to ask four questions. What do I want? What do you want? What do I not want? What do you not want? Then you both have to agree. Frances had a career as an editor in a fast growing publishing house. She became involved with Luke, who likewise had a prospering career, his in the stock exchange. They had been in their committed relationship for 8 months and had begun to negotiate for their future together, with plans to marry the next year. One of the issues they dealt with was whether they would wait for children or have them as soon as possible and get a great au pair so that Francis's career could continue uninterrupted. They decided to marry, have 2 children fast, and have someone live in and be with the babies for the next few years while both of them achieved their career goals. Then they would renegotiate if necessary or desirable. For 9 months, Lilith and Martin had been in a relationship in which they were having difficulty negotiating. Although they both knew they wanted to marry someday and start a family, they clashed on the issue of when to marry and whether she would quit her job after the first baby came. Lilith wanted to marry soon and did not want to continue to work as a paralegal after having a child, but they would need her income, baby or not, to help him through an advanced law degree. The more Lilith lived with the question, the firmer was her decision that she did not want to let someone else raise her baby. Their non negotiable issues collided. Baby now versus money needed now. As a result, the relationship fell apart. Lilith went back to her still waiting old boyfriend Jeremy, a travel agent who was not as well educated as Martin, but was ready and willing to marry and start a family now. For Stewart, an exporter, having a wife who was available at a moment's notice to travel with him to foreign countries was a life commitment issue. Sylvia, his girlfriend, and he had done just that in the past year and a half of their monogamous relationship, especially after she was laid off from her job in the bridal department of a department store. In the last few months, their future talk negotiations had begun in earnest. But the problem was, as much as Sylvia enjoyed their trips, she did not want to be there only for Stuart. She wanted her own career as well. Both wanted to either move forward or end the relationship. As a solution, Sylvia looked for a storefront in which she can begin a bridal shop. She had worked for 5 years to get enough money to follow her dream. Now she was faced with the decision about a possible marriage to Stuart and his need for her to be available for him. Their solution came with Sylvia getting a partner who could be available daily and was willing to have Sylvia come and go as needed. Sylvia and Stuart had successfully negotiated their differences and made these work for the benefit of both of them. Changing roles. Flexibility in role behavior is the mode of this period. Each person is coming out more individually than in the earlier phases of the relationship. So, this is the time when you begin to negotiate an interchanging of masculine and feminine roles. Sarah, a casting director at a major studio, had always enjoyed driving, and it was difficult for her to maintain her position of passenger passenger in her boyfriend Jed's car during the first 7 months of their relationship, but she had done it. Following my teachings, whenever Jed and an assistant director would speed or lane change a little recklessly, she would communicate her feelings of nervousness. He would immediately slow down and take more care. Still, Sarah wanted to do driving and she wanted to ask to do it by using my system. After we agreed to talk about the subject, she said, Jed, I appreciate your willingness to hear my feelings of nervousness when you drive, and I appreciate your willingness to accommodate my needs. However, I want to do all the driving. What do you think? Jed agreed because he knew that when she was comfortable, he would be. It was not necessary for his male ego to maintain control. He could become the feminine passenger. Leo, a graphic designer who had been in a committed monogamous relationship for 6 months with Ursula, a hostess at a I guess that's supposed to be a tiny Malibu restaurant, also wanted to role switch, but in his case, he wanted to go from masculine to feminine in the area of their social calendar. Leo admitted to Ursula that he really wanted her to tell him things she wanted to do on dates and where she wanted to eat. He was more than willing to pay for their dates, but he wanted her to design them. At first, she felt this change would feel unromantic, but after a few weeks, she found she liked being the masculine leader in control of this area. Still, whenever Leo had a good idea, he would tell her, and she would go along with it. They operated with flexibility. Paul, a television producer, and his girlfriend, Michelle, an actress, had been dating for 7 months by the time they came into my office. When they began the relationship, they were both on their best behavior. Michelle acted very sexy and adorable and deferred to Paul in most things, and Paul quite naturally cherished Michelle's feelings. But because they were both strong, evolved people, both sometimes male and sometimes female, after 7 months they had reverted to their natural ways. By the time I saw them, they were in conflict over sharing ideas and feelings. They collided when he said he wanted one thing and she said she wanted another, or when they both felt bad at the same time and each wanted their feelings cherished by the other. It was clear to me that they go no further in their relationship, much less negotiate their future until they learn how to negotiate and compromise through communication. In their first session, I asked, who wants to be the male energy and be responsible for leading with ideas, and who wants to be the female energy and support these ideas with feelings? A long pause. Then, almost at the same time, they both said that they wanted to be the male energy and the female energy. In that case, I said, you are both terminally single and narcissistic, which is fine for people who want to live alone, but won't work for couples who want to share their lives together. I told them that energy is the currency of exchange and that energy comes either in active maleness or passive femaleness. For a relationship to work, one person must lead with thoughts and the other must follow or respond with feelings. I advise them both to always be willing to hear the other out without judgment. Paul and Michelle eventually decided that for 2 weeks he would be the leader and she would follow. I wanted them to experience the roles in harmony to determine genuine comfort in them. First, I taught them, sorry, First, I taught them my daily amigo talk. Daily amigo talk is a powerful technique to daily vent and stop toxic buildup of unproductive and detrimental emotions like resentment and frustration. It helps avoid denial as a solution to keep the peace. Each day, whether in person or on the telephone, Paul, as the masculine energy, would say to Michelle, the feminine energy, how do you feel about any topic of interest to them? Then, as she answered him, he would listen to her without interrupting, judging, teaching, or giving suggestions. After Michelle told him her true feelings, Paul would then ask, what can I do to help you feel better about this? Michelle would tell him, and he would do his best to help her feel better. Michelle, the feminine energy, would then ask Paul, the masculine energy, what do you think about any topic of interest to him? While Paul spoke, Michelle listened to him without interrupting, judging, teaching, or giving suggestions. When Paul was done, Michelle would then ask, what can I do to assist you in achieving this? Paul would tell her, and she would do her best to help him. In the second session, Paul and Michelle learned how to deal with their second priority, his feelings and her thoughts. This is initiated by one person signaling the other that a shift is taking place and then getting the other person to acknowledge a willingness to listen. By doing this, the communication channel switches, but with discipline, not chaos or confusion. Paul learned how to share his feelings only after saying, Michelle, I have had a bad day, or I have some negative feelings I want to share. How do you feel about listening? If Michelle agreed to listen right then or acknowledged her willingness to listen at another more convenient time, he has successfully signaled and gotten permission to talk. When asking for Michelle's permission before dumping his feelings on her, he cherished her feelings above his own and she then felt respected. Paul admitted that he often felt challenged by Michelle when she told him what she wanted from him. I reminded Michelle that she must get permission from Paul before sharing ideas, opinions, or suggestions with him. She must ask him if he wants to hear them. I explained that when she wanted to lead or put out her thoughts or wants, the approach should be, I have an idea, suggestion, opinion, or want. Are you willing to listen to me now or later? By asking Paul's permission to tell him her ideas, she respected him as the leader, which helped him feel cherished by her. However, if in these negotiations Paul answered with, no, I'm not willing to listen now or later, this would be a red flag, and it would be time for Michelle to think about leaving him, but that did not happen. After experimenting as the masculine energy for 2 weeks, Michelle renegotiated and chose to be the feminine. She did not want a lot of leader responsibility. She just wanted it once in a while. In a few weeks of practice, Paul and Michelle were communicating daily and venting thoughts and feelings smoothly. This enhanced their intimacy enough so that they could bring up all various flashpoints in their relationship that couples must work out in order to go forward successfully. Negotiating these things before trouble strikes eliminates a lot of stress. Living together. One of the biggest issues you will deal with in this phase is, should we live together before marriage? My warning is, don't do it. When you move in with him, you bring your sensuous sexual self to him without his having to bring you the status of engagement or marriage. He gets a better deal than you do. Remember, many shark men will live with you for your luscious goodies, sex, homemaking skills, companionship, but will resist putting a ring on your finger because the truth is, what most men want to marry is your virtue. So, although a man may talk about the future before you move in, find out what he really means. What constitutes living together? It means you share the same address. I don't mean sleeping over. That's not living together. Naturally, at this stage in your relationship, you stay overnight with each other, either at his place or yours, but it's not the same as living together. As long as you or he have an escape place to go to, you are not living together, only visiting. My suggestion is that you not live with a man until you have a ring on your finger, either an engagement ring or a wedding band, or at least until you both have committed to becoming engaged and getting married. Me personally, and this is just the matchmaker speaking, don't do it until you're engaged at the very least. Don't go off of his promise of getting married. Let him put a ring on your finger first, then you move in. Still, now let's go back to the book. Still, you need to take time before moving in together to work out certain issues and avoid painful experiences. For instance, most masculine men who want to feel in charge require their women to defer to their wishes in the area of logistics. A man may feel uncomfortably out of control at her place, so it may be appropriate to do his or a new ours. Since Michelle and Paul decided that Paul would be the primary male energy, they decided that she would move into his apartment, which, as it happened, was also larger. As a professional actress, Michelle maintained a large wardrobe for every possible engagement. When Paul and she decided to live together, they needed to look at closets as battlegrounds of the future. Paul, knowing how sensitive Michelle was about her wardrobe, needed to not hurt her feelings with blunt logic such as, get rid of that old stuff, we don't have space. Instead, he needed to say, we don't have much closet space. What would make you comfortable? Storing your things in a rented space or getting some wardrobe boxes and putting them in the extra room as if it were a closet? I'm talking in this way. In talking in this way, Paul showed that he cared about Michelle's feelings, and at the same time, he allowed Michelle to relinquish her things on her own rather than to feel deprived, which would create resentment. Michelle ultimately chose to make one small extra bedroom into a closet. As the masculine energy based partner in the relationship, Paul understood that he would always do better with Michelle if he cherished her feelings rather than assume she was logical about sensitive issues like treasured clothing. We women also become upset with men who do not respond sensitively to situations that we feel emotionally about. I'm feeling scared about being alone, Michelle said to Paul on the telephone one night when he was out of town. You're okay. The dog is with you. Get some sleep, and I'll talk to you in the morning. Paul said, a rational enough response, but one that negated Michelle's feelings entirely. The next week, when they were in therapy, I suggested he would have done better by saying, I know you're frightened, honey. What do you want me to do? Probably Michelle would have said, it's okay. I just needed to know you cared. I'll be okay. Talk to you tomorrow. I always ask my audience of women, how many of you would die for a man who would say, honey, I don't quite get what you're saying. Could you talk more about your feelings? If you get a man who says that, tell him what you feel. A feminine woman would rather have a man say, this is what I want. How do you feel about it? Then, would you like this or would you mind that? Or could we do this? A man who acts in this way may defend his behavior by saying he wants to be polite. But I believe that a man who doesn't have the courage to say what he wants, risk rejection, and go on with the relationship is not wanting to be a leader. He will manipulate you into leading and then resent you for doing it. So do not allow yourself to be pulled in unless you want to change your role. Money. Money is an issue you and he have to get to before, not after you live together. Because money, like sex, is a potential power play area. You must have a system agreed upon by both of you, or everything will fall apart, either in power games or secret manipulations. This is a time of the open book, which means you will have a free exchange between you concerning the assets and liabilities of both of you. Even though you may feel uncomfortable with the subject or reluctant because you're afraid he will think you nosy, you must talk about these issues. Do not just let the sex carry the relationship along. You need to know if he has ever been in bankruptcy proceedings and what his present credit is like, because along with marriage comes the joint sharing of liabilities. As partners in marriage, you are partners in business, and it must be clear what each of you is bringing to the table. Your masculine energy man will usually open these issues for discussion by asking you about your debts, rent, car payments, etc. He may even offer to pay them off before marriage if it is necessary and you cannot pay them immediately in order to not tarnish his credit. But you can open the discussion by revealing your own financial situation and asking his suggestions about the best way to handle things to secure the best future for you as a couple. If he doesn't want to talk, you may suspect that something is amiss. Of course, during the second stage, the imperfect phase, you might have gotten some clues about his credit if when he took you out to dinner and paid the bill. As his credit card was quietly brought back to your table, he mumbled something like, "My secretary didn't send the check out on time." But that was then, and this is now. Now you're in the third stage, the negotiable phase. So you may need to say, "Honey, may I ask you a question about your ideas on how we would handle money if we lived together, engaged, or married?" If he responds with a flat no with no opening for future talk, he is blocking the discussion, which means trouble deeper than money. It means he does not want to negotiate this issue. Asking, "What is your reason for not wanting to talk at some time? What is your reason for not wanting to talk at some time about money?" may get him to tell you any number of things. He may be embarrassed about his credit. You need to know this. Or he may be secretive and does not intend to negotiate his money. Or he just may not be as committed to a future together as you are. And you better find that out before you spend a lot of time with him. Whatever the reason, talking and negotiating in this stage of your relationship will bring success in the fourth stage, which is commitment. Silence, secretiveness, mind reading, expectations, and assumptions are the qualities of failure. You cannot consider yourself in a marriage bound relationship until you discuss the issues that are important to you. Stu, a pilot, had two children by his previous wife. Cassie, a jewelry designer with whom he was now having a serious committed relationship, loved having Stu's children over for visits, but she needed to find out if he was willing to have more children with her. They had begun talking about marriage after about 8 months together. So one day Cassie said, "Stu, what do you think about our having two children if we get married?" Stu became very quiet and then said, "I'll have to think about that, Cassie. 4 children would be a lot of responsibility for me." Cassie backed off for a week, and then one day she asked again. She said, "Stu, remember I asked you about your thoughts on our having children? Have you got any ideas about it yet?" Then she held her breath. This was a big answer for her. She knew she would not accept a no answer. She would have to leave him, even though she was bonded to him. Cassie, Stu said, I know you want your babies and you deserve them. The only way I can handle it is if you would be willing either to wait a few years until I could support you all, or if you continue to work part time while you had the children. How do you feel about that? She was relieved. She needed only to get a yes answer on the children issue. Figuring a way to financially support them was easier. She immediately began to think about something she could do at home to earn money and be with their children. Stu and Cassie hugged, and Cassie started crying from happiness. It was another successful negotiation for them. They were moving toward total life commitment. If you and your man are both working, you can share 50-50 if your incomes are nearly equal, or you can do a percentage amount from both incomes that will cover the household kitty and allow each of you leftover money in your separate accounts. Or you can put away all your combined income in a communal account and draw out stipends, allowances for pin money. Both of you can pay bills, or you can pay, or he can, or you can alternate months. As long as you have a formula that each is comfortable with, it will work. Having no formula means that one or both of you will try to control with money. The one rule I support is that the person who brings in the largest portion of money, the masculine, do good to feel good person, whether man or woman, always has the right to determine whether he or she will control his or her money. Allocate control to the spouse or have a professional do it. Marriage is not an automatic financial turnover situation. The money each person earns is his or hers until turned over to the marriage community. Turning it over must be a free, voluntary, good business decision. Women in the past have blindly allowed their husbands to handle money they have earned or inherited as the right way. Men also have the right to determine how and who shall control their money in marriage. So you and your man negotiate which of you will handle your finances, overseas investments, retirement plans and budgets, and independent allowances for each. It doesn't matter who writes the checks as long as one person is in charge. There cannot be two presidents in a corporation. In most marriages, the man most often brings in the major money, so usually it is the man who decides how the money is spent as long as his woman is comfortable. If your ideal is to be the vice president or the female, then your man will be the one who structures the finances. As the female energy, you are with a man you respect. You do not compete with him or expect him to be the all generous daddy to whom you say, if you loved me, you'd let me do what I want. That's immature and irresponsible. Of course, problems may come along when the equation changes. If children come and one of you stops working, or if both of you are working but resources are stretched and different money priorities emerge, but if you have developed a system of negotiation, you will be able to meet these problems successfully. I usually tell a feminine energy woman that her man will feel as comfortable as his career feels. And when he loses his career, or if it is shaky, or his money is mishandled, he gets very ego shaken. Michelle and Paul worked out a financial arrangement for their future. They agreed that when they got engaged and moved in together, they would each put in 75% of their net incomes to cover expenses and leave 25% for personal use. Since Paul presently made more money than Michelle did, he would be left with more discretionary money. But she felt comfortable that her contribution was an equitable percentage. They both acknowledged that due to their professions, the next year would see a reverse. She might be the one making more money. But if she wasn't, she knew she would have more time to do the bookwork and account balancing. So she agreed to become the comptroller for the couple, promising always to give Paul a monthly profit and loss accounting. Private property. One of the important issues that must be discussed during the negotiation phase is how to deal with the equity that either or both of you bring to the relationship. If he has a lot of money and you don't, does that mean he should use that money to support you? What if you have the money either through an inheritance or because you are a successful professional woman who has been on her own before meeting this wonderful new man. You may have a substantial investment portfolio, or real estate, art, cars, furniture. Does that mean that you pay for that trip to Paris that you can afford and he can't? Or that you throw your money and assets into a mutual account to be drawn on by both? Well, you can if you want to, but I have found that a man or woman who has worked hard to achieve personal financial security, or who has had his or her assets subdivided in a previous relationship, often requires a pre or postnuptial agreement in order to relax about the issue of what will happen to his or her personal assets. The problem is that when the agreement is seen as a battleground, it forecasts danger for the relationship. What to do? Well, I have found in working with clients who either do have prior money or who are marrying someone with money that the major negotiation is the prenuptial agreement, which can be positive if both parties understand that it is for security, not stinginess. If your man requests a prenuptial agreement, my advice is to let him have it. To require a man who has been married before or previously involved in a serious long term relationship to go vulnerable again is such a huge risk that he may not marry you unless you can agree. When Michelle and Paul talked about money negotiations, it was he who brought up the idea of a prenuptial agreement. He had inherited a large sum of money. Michelle talked to me about his idea. She asked if there was some sort of agenda behind his not wanting to share with her. I explained that Paul was justifiably fearful of being vulnerable in this area because of past losses, and that the reality is that life in a relationship can mean weeks, months, or a few years. It usually does not really mean life. In other words, sometimes love dies. The prenuptial agreement has no effect on the happy lifestyle you create together. It only applies to an unhappy relationship that needs to be fairly terminated. I explained to Michelle that if and when the time came to sign the contract, instead of fighting Paul, she should take the document to her attorney to determine if she was being dealt with fairly. However, if she rebelled against the very idea of an agreement, Paul would probably question the integrity of Michelle's motives and thereby intensify the situation and suspect that Michelle was looking toward a divorce with gain. By the way, Michelle did take Paul's prenuptial agreement to her attorney, who saw only one thing that he would have her ask for, and that was that if the marriage was going fine, the prenuptial agreement would be set aside in 5 years. Paul agreed, and his fears were alleviated. It was a healthy and productive compromise in which they both felt comfortable. Space, maintenance, and chores. Unless you and your mate are a perfect match, which, by the way, never happens, you must talk about such things as space, maintenance, and chores before anyone starts packing or unpacking. You must feel secure about how things will be laid out in these areas so as to avoid problems later. By private space, I mean rooms, closets, and drawers. Maintenance, on the other hand, refers to the plumbing and heating, the chores to doing the dishes, the laundry, taking care of the car, and all of these responsibilities need to be sorted out. Who will wait for the telephone repairman? Who does the shopping, cooking, cleaning? Many women and men make the mistake of thinking that chores are allocated by gender. Side note, if you're in a traditional marriage, they are allocated by gender, but because most people are modern, she is speaking, this book is based on modern dynamics. So, back to the book. But there are no gender related tasks. There are only physical limitations due to height, weight, and dexterity. In addition, some men like to go grocery shop either because they enjoy doing it and like to cook, or because it gives them sorry, a way of controlling the spending. Maybe they're into coupon clipping. Men love bargains. Some women have no patience for grocery shopping at all. It's all a matter of negotiating the division of labor. You do it better, or it's more important to you, so you take it over. Some men love housekeeping and some women love carpentry. I suggest that you sit down with your man and make a list of household responsibilities, then choose how to delegate them between you equitably. Open negotiations with no one giving in resentfully will allow a couple to live together peacefully. What I want you to do is to have an agenda for time, space, money, and play, and deliberately go over each item with your man until a good contract is built. Then you must redo this agreement regularly as needed. Gwen and Steve didn't know any of this until they experienced it firsthand. Will you move in with me? Steve asked Gwen one night after they had been dating for about 6 months. They re met after a Kenosha high school reunion and found out that each was now living in Los Angeles. She, a flight attendant, and he, an associate at a major law firm. They began dating, and the pleasure they found in being together was a source of surprise and joy to them both. It was sustained by their shared memories and hometown experiences and by their growing compatibility and deepening feelings for each other. Then the lease on Steve's apartment ran out, and he and Gwen talked about his moving into her apartment. It seemed logical because they had begun to talk in earnest about becoming engaged and been leasing or buying a place together. But the problems began almost immediately after he moved in. She was neat and he was sloppy. Steve would leave his clothes on a chair in their bedroom. Gwen would dutifully put away his clothes and then act her best martyr role until his guilt would take over and he would comply with her wishes. That is, until the next time. Gwen became angry and he didn't change to please her. Whenever they fought, Gwen would move into her extra room, which would leave Steve feeling rejected until he could cajole her back into their room. If he couldn't get her to come back to their room, he would storm out in his straightforward neighborhood bar where he would pour out his troubles to the friendly bartender. Meanwhile, she hated the amount of time he spent in front of his computer and felt rejected. In fact, both of them felt rejected by the other, and each denied vehemently that he or she was doing the rejecting. Then there was the problem of money. Gwen was reluctant to begin saving money toward purchasing their home. She wanted to keep her money for her needs and let him buy the house. But Steve was not that old fashioned. He wanted equitable sharing. Naturally, the friction had an impact on their sex life. Soon, both Steve and Gwen began to wonder if they had done the right thing in living together. They became confused and fearful about planning the future. Hearing about me from a mutual friend, they made an appointment to come to my office. Mutate, don't eliminate. At this point, both Gwen and Steve understood that real life was encroaching on their otherwise romantic courtship, and although each could have picked up his or her marbles and moved on, I did urge them and would urge anyone encountering or budding reality to stay and dig in. I don't believe in divorce, legal or emotional, as long as there is any piece of love left. Love is so hard to come by that when you do get a little of it, you should nurture it to the very end. As I said earlier, I feel that if you get someone who is maybe 51% or above, keep that person. That is to say, if you like more about the person than you don't, then keep him. Because the odds are that if you don't and go out looking for a better deal, you could end up with someone who is 49% or worse. So don't abort a relationship that has value in it. Stay until you cannot stay. You will know the time to leave because you will feel about empathetic and apathetic toward your mate. You will feel both empathetic and apathetic toward your mate. The spark and the angry feelings will be gone. I often say, she who leaves first in anger is doomed to repeat the relationship experience. She who stays until the end when the lessons are learned moves to the next step in relationship skills. Gwen and Steve did decide to stay, and it was in this period that they learned to negotiate a deal that allowed each of them the freedom to be themselves while sharing the responsibilities of the relationship. One of the things they needed to recognize was that it was problems and crises that stimulated them to start negotiating. They needed to learn to talk about issues before they turned into problems. Because Steve moved in with her, Gwen had a lot of masculine power in doing what she wanted. The resulting problem was Gwen's unwillingness to talk through issues. Instead, she ran off to her own room, thereby eliminating Steve until he reacted to her leaving by leaving himself. Steve wanted to be the masculine to her feminine. He eventually solved this problem by not leaving but going into her private room and confronting the issue. The result was that they both committed to talk at least 15 minutes once a day about resentments and appreciations of each other. I call this we time. This was the beginning of an amigo talk system rather than just running away to be alone. I time. After negotiation, Gwen allowed herself to let go of her masculine side in deference to Stevens. There are three systems of dealing with your partner. You can intimidate him with fear, you can seduce him with guilt, or you can negotiate with love, remembering that love is acceptance. Gwen and Steve had been dealing through guilt and fear. When Gwen began hibernating in her room, she was trying to make Steve feel guilty, and when Steve began leaving the apartment, he was trying to frighten her. By reassessing their relationship through my negotiation methods, using love, they learned to accommodate their individual needs. Soon, Gwen's standard of homemaking was respected by Steve, his leadership in finances was respected by her, and her being in charge of the social calendar dates and interior design was respected by him. As they lived with their commitments, they continued to negotiate readjustments rather than fight. If a man thinks of his living space simply as a place where he gets gratified, where he can sit, where his woman mothers him and he doesn't have to take her out on a date or bring people into the relationship, then he is going to dry her up because she needs to feel good. She needs to get out there and she needs to have some fun in her life with him. It is a masculine man's job to give that pleasure to her or risk losing her. It is a feminine woman's job to appreciate his efforts and respond joyfully. Time. Although in the first hot days of a romance, you and he cannot get enough of each other. Once a relationship is established and real life enters the picture, each of you has different ideas about the way you expect to spend your time. Sometimes you want to be with your mate and sometimes not. This is the time that both partners have to negotiate to learn how to integrate their past and present lives and selves. I suggest that dating alone as a couple at least once a week is important to keep the romance alive, and that socializing at least twice a month with people each of you find interesting will gradually build a pool of friends both enjoy. You had friends, relatives, hobbies, and sports in your life before you met your new love interest. For a relationship to be healthy, it must add to your private life, not detract. In order to incorporate your past into your present, you must negotiate an overall agreement for the time you spend alone together. Ben, an oral surgeon, was more dependent on his girlfriend. Lois, a high powered TV executive, than she liked. He seems needy, clingy, she said. It turns me off. She's too independent, Ben said. I want us to be more centered on being a couple than on being individuals. Isn't that what a relationship is? No, I answered. In order to be a good we, you both must stand alone as individual I's. Don't forget to be I in favor of we, or you will ruin everything. Play. When Aaron and his girlfriend Tina played, they had lots of fun. Aaron was a member of a rowing crew, and he raced with his team as often as he could. He also played golf once a week. Tina loved to play tennis, and she enjoyed being a spectator at Aaron's rowing matches. They supported each other's personal hobbies. As far as their time together was concerned, they enjoyed plays and movies, especially screenings, since these were valuable for their careers. They were both actors. They also enjoyed entertaining at home and traveling. Aaron and Tina were compatible in enough areas to be able to share their playtime alone and together. But things were more problematic for Diane and Joel, who at one counseling session talked about their upcoming vacation plans. Joel, an insurance agent, wanted to spend their 2 week vacation together bicycle touring New England, whereas Diane, a dancer, wanted to rent a cottage on Cape Cod and take smaller biking excursions on day trips. Obviously, they both like vacationing in New England and bicycling. Their only conflict was a set location or multiple ones. Usually, or at least since they had been coming to see me, Diane, who was the feminine energy in a relationship, would deliberately defer to Joel and respect his thinking ahead of her own. However, going on vacation seemed like a feeling issue to Diane. She believed her feelings deserved to be cherished above his logic. They were both angry and ready to end their vacation plans and maybe their relationship of 8 months. The question was how to achieve a win win instead of a win lose situation. In order to resolve it, we needed to know what Joel thought and why. Joel's logic told him that variety was more important than stability. I don't want to be stuck in one place, he said. I don't get to that part of the country that often, and I want to see as much as I can. Clearly, he wanted Diane to defer to him. She wanted the same. She wanted to get to know a specific area and to have time to just be together, to relax and unwind from the pressures of their lives. The issue seemed so equal. He wanted respect, she wanted to be cherished. My advice? Compromise for best results. Joel agreed to one location, the cottage for his trip, since it was a fun, filling vacation, not a decathlon training program for bicyclers. And Diane promised that their next trip would be a bike tour through some other parts of New England. Once they got off on winning, they stopped losing. Sexual negotiations. Since sex is a Pandora's box that can stop a relationship cold, I will devote the next few chapters to this subject. However, here I will say that when it is time to negotiate sexual issues, do it while sitting or standing upright. You do not negotiate sexual issues lying down. It is too vulnerable an issue at a time of intimacy. The pain would be compounded. By the way, you do not tell your man how many other men you have slept with or how good in bed they were. The only things from the past you need to confess are venereal or other diseases that could impact on the other's well being. In some states, you can be arrested for keeping such health secrets. Regularly, monthly in the first year, bi monthly in the second, and at least every 3 months till death or divorce. Talk about time, space, money, and play. Renegotiate if it is necessary. Okay, that is the end of chapter 14. So I will give my thoughts. So in closing and summary, I agree that negotiations are essential to creating a healthy relationship dynamic. You have to learn to negotiate early on, and that's where I differ from her. I don't believe you wait until you are 8 months in a relationship, 6 months into a relationship to then start focusing on how to negotiate. You need to start focusing on that now because in this day and age, we're in a different time. Getting to I Do was wrote in 1994, which was what, about 20, almost 20 years ago? No, almost 30 years ago. Yeah, almost 30 years ago. And the times have changed significantly. Um, there's so much going on to where I would say that you wouldn't need to start negotiating in the getting to know you phase. You don't need to you need to negotiate religion, money, in-laws, family dynamics, children, because people are taking these things on. It's dating is so much harder, so much convoluted. You get 8 months in with somebody, you start negotiating these things only to find out you're not on the same page. People's attachment styles will force them to try to either keep together, or you get in a dating, you get out of the relationship, and then the dating market has changed significantly since then. It's harder to get back in. So I would say negotiate very from the very beginning, but you have to be open to compromise. Negotiating is not about giving up something. Negotiations are for the purpose of both people getting what they want. Compromise comes in when there is a problem, and then you have both have to give up something, or one person will have to give up a little bit of something, or you both give up a little bit of something. That's what compromising does. So compromise and negotiations are two different things. You negotiate for what you want. If you come to a stalemate, then you'll have to compromise, and both will have to give up a little bit something, or you would have to come to an agreement. So negotiation, need to negotiate on all things. You need to especially negotiate on finances, roles, chores, children, religion, and those things. What you don't negotiate on is your values, your ethics, and your morals. Those are your standards. Those should be set in stone. So if your value and your standard is, I will not move in unless I have a ring. Now you kind of was thinking until marriage, but you can negotiate engagement with a date set. I do agree that you do not move in with anyone unless there is a ring on your finger. When a man puts a ring on your finger, that signifies his true intent to commit to you. Without the ring, like she said, I'm just gonna be honest with you, ladies, that there are men who will get you to move in, and then they will suck you dry by taking everything you have to offer without you getting anything on the back end. So for a marriage-minded woman, that is a bad deal. A woman who wants marriage, if you are giving anything and you are not getting the one thing that you want most, which is a committed relationship that will lead to marriage, engagement, marriage, you are signing yourself up for a bad deal. This is why you never get into a relationship or you even start anything with a man who has taken marriage off the table or who is not sure that he wants marriage. I don't care how much money he's spending on you. I don't care how much what he's doing. You are getting a bad deal, because what is going to end up being required of you in order to get him to convince him to want to marry you, it's going to be an unfair and unbalanced and uneven. You're going to have to do so much. That's why you hear so many of these conversations men talk about in the getting to know you phase or the girlfriend phase. They're talking about her needing to cook, clean, wash his clothes, do all the things that a wife and or a mother would do, but you never hear what they're willing to do. So when I do ask them, well, what are you giving her for her to do these things, for her to reciprocate in this manner? Well, if I'm going on dates, I'm paying for the dates. That is not an even exchange. That is not a fair deal. That is a bad deal. He's getting much more than he's giving, which means she is now in her masculine and she's giving instead of receiving. Ladies, you negotiate in a way of, I will reciprocate whatever is given to me. So if he's giving you his time, you reciprocate based on that. If he's giving you commitment, you reciprocate based on that. So negotiation is essential. The only thing I disagree with is to do it in the getting to know you phase instead of just waiting until he asks you to be his girlfriend. You definitely need to have a commitment, a negotiation on when you are engaged and you're living together. I'm here to tell you, ladies, you need to definitely understand the living arrangements. Okay. I remember my guy and I, when we were talking about this, I have a huge wardrobe. He has very small closet space based on where he lives. And at first he was like, well, I just don't want a person sharing my closet space. I have everything all neat and ordered. And I had to explain to him, well, I don't feel like we're together as a couple if I can't share closet space in the room. He has two closets. I said, how about we move all of your things to one closet and then I take another closet. And whatever doesn't fit into our one closet, we can put into an extra closet in another room. But I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like we're in a relationship and we're progressing and moving to the next step if my things are all in another room. I feel like I'm just coming to visit. He agreed. He saw how I felt, and he wanted to cherish my feelings, and he said, "You know what? That makes sense. Okay. We'll do it that way." Right? So you must negotiate. Oh, so Alex, the subject of the book is Getting to I Do by Dr. Patricia Allen, and the subject of the book is based on the secret to doing relationships right. So she is helping women to understand how you get to I do from the getting to know you phase all the way up until the commitment phase, which is engagement. So I advise you all go ahead, if you haven't read the book, to go ahead and get it. It's on Amazon. Again, it's Getting to I Do by Dr. Patricia Allen. So tomorrow we will go over chapter 15, which is how to have sex and make it great. I think that's a great subject that most people would be interested in, since everyone seems to love sex and that's all they like talking about. All right. Make sure you all are liking and sharing this video. And if you are new, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's the only way to help the channel grow. And like I said earlier, the more the channel grows, the more that I know that what I'm doing is appreciated, which makes me want to do it more. There's no need for me to waste my time to people who is not interested in the subject matter to which I am speaking on. So if you want me to do more content, the channel grows. Please help me by doing that. Help me to do that by clicking the subscribe button, liking, and sharing the video, right? All right, with that being said, I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you same place, same time tomorrow, 3 p.m., chapter 15.